I've never seen anything quite like this. Tell us about the Berlin Heart.
The Berlin Heart is an experimental machine that actually stands in for your heart. And there was a doctor up at the University of Florida that had done 3 of these, and they told us, this is your daughter's only hope. And if it's not approved by the FDA, but if we can put her on a Berlin Heart, perhaps it'll keep her alive until she can get a heart transplant.
You looked very positive in that picture, despite being so plugged up and plugged in, Grace.
She was on that for over 4 months. Wow. And, you know, eventually she got better. When they first put it on her, she had been in a coma for 8 days, and she had to come to from an 8-day coma, and Robin had to tell her that you have a machine that's pumping your heart for you, and you're going to be in this hospital until you can get a heart transplant. But
which we don't know when that is, by the way. That the waiting. You know,
That's
endless.
a whole chapter of faith, isn't it? The waiting. I know people tracked with you. You blogged. You had people praying, people reading your journal entries, all of which are now in the book, Gracyn's song. A heart transplant would come. And what did you say before that transplant, Gracyn?
Well, when they say they have a heart for you and they say that we can do the transplant, they also say everything bad that can happen. They say
it's like the drug commercials. They tell you all the things that scares you away from it all, doesn't it?
Well, they can go in and open up your chest and get ready, and then they can look at the heart and say, this isn't right. So we knew that could happen, but before we went in for surgery, we prayed, and I said, Dear Lord, thank you that you might have brought a heart for me, but if it doesn't work out the way I want it to, I'll still trust in you.
And this was after she'd been stuck in the hospital, knowing that she could come out of that surgery still hooked to a machine. So that was quite an amazing statement.
Yeah, that's the faith of a child that is talked about.
Yes.
That's the faith that it takes to move mountains. You know, when there's faith like that, that's when God can really work a miracle. Because, you know, we can't move our mountains, but God can. And just to have her going into surgery and say that prayer of faith, even if it doesn't work out the way I want it to, I'm still going to trust you. That's what he's looking for, that kind of trust.
To have a child that isn't terrified, just for starters, to go under the knife. and then to be expressing these words of confident faith. I'm sure this is part of your faith story now.
Oh yeah,
absolutely.
You know, God gave her such strength and such faith, and you know, we talk about in the book so often I'd say, why did this happen to my daughter, and why would you do this, Lord? But we learned over time a better question to be asking is, God, what are you doing in this process? What miracle do you have planned? What should we be praying for next? So if someone's going through a really tough time and facing a crisis, instead of asking God, why is this happening to me? We've learned a better question is, God, what are you doing, and what are you planning to do? What will you do? We want to watch you work your plan.
That gets you on page with him.
Right. Instead of feeling sorry for yourself, you're more open to see what God's really up to.
You actually said, Kris, and he will show you. Yeah, because you're looking in the right direction. Instead of being overwhelmed in the circumstance, you're looking to the one who's big enough. Yes. I just thought it was very insightful. You said that when you asked the why question, it inflamed your anxiety and weakened your faith. Yeah. That's not the way you want to go. Absolutely not. But when you're in that position when only God can do something, you shouldn't be drawing away from him. And when you're asking him why, you're really drawing away from him and building your own anxiety, because all you're thinking about is yourself. You know, this anxiety is too much for me to bear. It's terrible. Why is this happening to me? It diminishes you. It does. But when you say, God, what are you doing? What is your plan? What are you going to do next? What should I be praying for in this very moment, Lord? What should I do in this next step? It draws you to him, and it allows you to take that next step in faith, because that's what the journey of faith is, we learned. It's a step-by-step process of giving him the outcome, but then just taking that next step, and he's always faithful. Gracyn, tell us what we're looking at, oh my, in the next picture.
Well, this picture, the first one is I had come out of surgery and was just recovering, and this one right here, I was actually holding my heart that had been in my body, and so they had asked me, do you want to see your heart after transplant? And I said, Sure.
Let me hold that thing.
It was
So,
fascinating.
Yeah, it
it
is.
was fascinating.
yeah,
She's one of the few people who have held her own heart in her
She
hands.
held her own heart.
This is an amazing story. We could tell so many gems, particularly moving. You've always loved to sing, Gracyn, and I think Father's Day was the first opportunity you had to get up in front of your own church. That was very special. Tell us why.
well, the song that I sang the first time on Father's Day was called Healer. And we listened to that song every single night in the hospital before I would go to bed. And my mom would always say, someday you're going to be able to sing this. And it tells whatever you're going through, whatever's going on in your life, God's your healer and he'll always be with you.
It's amazing to read how people responded to the invitation. Where are you broken? Where do you need God's healing touch? God is using you. Your story, your song, and Grace's foundation, Gracyn's Heart Foundation. What is that?
Well, we established that, you know, when you've been given a gift like we have, you just can't help but give back. And we love to share her story because God did a miracle, a wonderful miracle in our life. And we know why God does miracles. So
We didn't even talk about the stroke that was supposed to
Many
impact her
miracles. Oh,
motor,
many, miracle
her
after
speech.
miracle. Yeah.
There's
Yes.
much more
There were
here.
so many things that happened in our journey, and God would work a miracle after miracle after miracle, and it added up to this great big miracle that now she gets to go share her story and share her miracle to point others to Him. Because He does miracles for His glory, and He does miracles so that we can share. And that's what the Gracyn Heart Foundation does. In fact, what we want to do is help people that face crisis. That's why we wrote the book. We learned so much on this journey, and we share that in the book. But we have a free download on our website called Crisis Survival Guide.
Crisis Survival
Yeah.
Guide. How practical is that?
At gracyn.org. Yes, it's the 10 key lessons we learned in our journey with scripture that was really important for each lesson. So if there's people out there that are facing crisis, they can download this and have a key lesson learned and a scripture to help carry you through a crisis, because He is there in our crisis to take us through each step.